In this era of grave spiritual crisis, it is not enough to simply know about your Catholic faith. That is why we need a Catholic toolbox to equip us with the practical skills necessary to live our Catholic faith to reach our ultimate goal, which is heaven for all eternity. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. for the Catholic Toolbox as we hand you the tools to go forth, live the faith, and change our modern world today. Live on the Voice of Charity.
Hello and welcome to another Parousia podcast. I'm Charbel, Raish, your host, and excited with a good friend of mine, our guest in the studio, none other than the author of this latest book, The Art of Practical Catholicism, Part 2. It's George Manassa. He's live in the studio with me now. George, how you going?
I'm well. How are you, Charbel?
Yeah, praise God. Very well. Congratulations on this book, The Art of Practical Catholicism. This is the second version. We launched the first one only just over a year and a half ago, but that's been fantastic and well received. And
it was actually 2020.
So we're going 2 years now.
2 years, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, during actually a short lockdown of the northern beaches.
I was confused which lockdown it was. I remember because we had to. But no, well done. How have you been?
Really, really busy. Really busy running business, and that's the day-to-day things, and many weddings. Actually, several weddings with good friends, and really running the show, the day-to-day living of Christian life. So it's been a very busy year so far. Yeah. It's been a very busy year. I can't believe we're already in August. That's right. It's really flown by very quickly, and we're already here. So
it wasn't that long ago when you had your own wedding.
Yeah,
remember that? What? How long has it been now?
It has been 2 years. 2 years and 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Almost 2 months.
Was the first book launched before or after the wedding?
It was launched before the wedding.
Before it, okay.
After I got engaged, because as you can see, it was dedicated to my then fiance.
All right.
Nikita, now my wife.
Beautiful. Now she's been a big part of the whole journey with Catholic Toolbox as well, hasn't she? What role has she played?
Well, she was essentially a co-founder, working with me to produce a lot of the editing, the marketing, the social media for the show when we first started, and a great support, and also a very also a co-host as well. She's hosted many of her own episodes on the show, and she'll be coming back very shortly. And we've had great feedback with my wife coming on board. I don't know, people. She's proven to be very popular. People love when she comes on. Maybe it's a dynamic of a husband and a wife, where just the dynamic of a husband and a wife speaking. So people have very much enjoyed having her on.
Oh, well, great! Looking forward to having her back on.
Yeah.
Now it's you have been busy. So many people may not know that it's not just the books that we talk about, but it's from the Catholic Toolbox, which comes from a show that you host every week, the Catholic Toolbox show.
Yeah.
When did you start that?
I started the Catholic Toolbox in the beginning of Lent in the year 2019.
Okay.
Yeah, Lent. So it was about February, but it was founded in essence in late 2018 when I attended, I was working in project management, managing a fairly large project at the time. And we attend every single week meetings called Toolbox meetings on the job sites. Now, as a junior project manager, I was required to attend those meetings, and they were usually on Monday mornings.
Yeah.
And those meetings were to strategize practically how we're going to deliver the project on time, cost, and quality for that particular week. What are the practical, what's the operational way we're going to execute this?
Yeah.
How many staff members do we need on site that week? How many machines do we need? How are we going to do this? How many days are we going to take for each item? It's very practical. It's the direct execution of the project, not the contract or the concept or the ideas it's directly executing. And then I was in one of those meetings on a Monday morning, and I was thinking about the church and the state of society and the many homilies I had heard and been sort of disgruntled with that they weren't practical enough. Yeah. A lot of formation wasn't practical, and I was thinking, my mind dozed off within 10, 15 minutes of that meeting. And then finally it came back down, and I thought, this is what we need for the church. We need a discussion that's practical every week, like an instruction. You can call it a toolbox meeting or a toolbox discussion for something practical where we take aspects of the faith, we study it, but then we go to the next level and digest how we're going to practically execute this in our day-to-day lives, whether it's your spiritual life, your prayer life, whether it's how to evangelize in the workplace, how to get good people elected, how to actually make good friends, whether it's human virtue or supernatural virtue. We want to think practically, and that's what's sort of missing, I believe, in the life of the church. We've got to get on this bandwagon of thinking practically, learning our faith, but translating it. So that's when I founded it in principle in 2018, late 2018. But then a good friend of mine, Father John Caddy, for the Voice of Charity Australia, Australia's only Catholic radio network, which Parousia podcast also airs on. Yeah. Big shout out to Voice of Charity. Tremendous work that they do.
Yeah, on the analog system, the only one, 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Now Radio Maria Australia has been launched in Australia, but it's digital.
Exactly.
And they're doing fantastic work as well.
Yeah.
Both great, but yes.
Voice of Charity is the only bandwidth Catholic radio station in the entire country. So I was offered a segment there, and he loved the idea of the Catholic toolbox and the whole principle. And then I started Lent. First episode was Lent of 2019. Actually, Ash, the day before, it was the Tuesday before Ash Wednesday.
Okay.
And then
remember the first topic?
The first topic was an introduction to the Catholic
and did you know faith? Did you have a bit of a forecast of the topics you were going to cover when you started this series?
I did. And a lot of the topics were how evangelizing in the workplace, doing apostolate, prayer life, the apologetics topics.
Yes.
But then translating it into, at the end of the show, and this is the theme of the show, is that we translate everything that we learn in the show into 3 practical tools. Mm-hmm. What can we do? Like practical instructions on how to take action with that particular area so that people for the week can go and improve their application of the faith in the day-to-day life. Because the world's ever changing. Yeah. We have to adapt. And I think that's the evangelical success of every generation, is how they can take the faith that is unchanging and perfect. How can they adapt it to the modern times and execute it in their day-to-day lives? So I wanted to produce a 1-hour-a-week show, because people don't go through volumes of reading and courses and everything else. Some people do, some people don't, but at least a 1-hour-a-week show was for everybody. Yeah. You know, it's an instruction. It was a toolbox talk, just like that construction site meeting. It was a toolbox talk, but just about the Catholic faith. Brilliant. Same principle.
Now, did you know at the time you were going to produce a book, or no, that came later?
No, absolutely not.
So tell us then, 2019, you had your first year, and it was every week airing on Voice of Charity. Also, is it TV Maria?
Yeah, TV Maria in the Philippines. So they've also picked it up as well.
EWTN, of course. And
EWTN, just like Parousia podcast.
I want to shout out to them.
A big, we'll have a drink for them. Yes. So cheers to EWTN.
Great work, EWTN, of course. Global Catholic Network. And now, of course, with Parousia, we've been promoting and working together over that time. I remember, when did the idea then of the first book, and I'm going to hold this up. This is the first book here, The Art of Practical Catholicism, Part 1. And if the camera can see it, but that's the first one we launched 2 years ago. When did this idea come? Was it after 40 shows? Do you remember when you first had the concept of the book? I
had the first concept of the book in at the end of in the middle of 2020, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
And I began to actually, it happened quite naturally. I began to actually write down my episodes.
All right.
That way I'd reflect, I'd pray about, what are we going to talk about this week? Come up with my own practical tools. And my wife, funnily enough, said, let your guests give the practical tools instead of, I used to share the practical tools with my guests. So I started to compile the different topics I was speaking about in the show in mid-2020. So every single week I'd write a section, try to summarize it with the hope that perhaps, I could collect these things as they're built naturally through doing the show and produce a guide.
Yes.
Like a faith guide for people to take action, like an instruction manual on how to take action in the different areas and practical tools.
That's
where it started.
And you've produced this, and I remember being at the launch, and it was such a great event. But your very first chapter, having the grace to start.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very, very simple, a very practical concept as well, that it is built on grace. Focusing on achieving salvation,
mm-hmm.
living your liturgy, how to evangelize in your workplace, how to defend your faith in any context. And it goes on. There's 40 topics. This is in part 1, 40 topics. The last one being always being prepared for death. So very good. Endorsed right here by the late Cardinal George Pell, and Bishop Richard Umbers and Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, which is great. And then the forward by Father John Flada.
Exactly.
So that's really. So I want to congratulate on that. That's part 1, and to learn the process of how you did it was brilliant. Your weekly show, the guests would typically give the practical tools, but is that the case in the book? Are these the guest practical tools or yours in the book?
They're mine. Yeah,
these are yours.
So what happened in mid-2020 was I started to want to I wanted to write the whole episode down and prepare for it in a written form.
Yes.
I wanted to produce my own practical tools to perhaps as notes for the show.
Mm.
So, but I'd never give them. Eventually I'd give my guests the practical tools, and so I'd expect from my guests to give me the practical tools.
Yeah.
So no, the book is purely my own practical tools, because and listening to these great guests and getting ideas, and that's the whole principle of the Art of Practical Catholicism. Is just like in the book at the back, I provide notes and resolutions, a section for people to actually come up with their own practical tools. Their own things. So I'm not trying to impose in the book my practical tools on most people, though they may find them helpful in giving instruction, but some may not be relevant to some people. But what I do in the book is essentially instill in you the art of practical Catholicism, which is a mindset of learning the faith and then coming up with ways, okay, how can we do this? How can I take action? What can I do to increase my prayer life? How can I not doze off in my prayer life? How can I actually bring up our Lord in the workplace? Just the practical ways I can take action, the tools, the practical tools.
Brilliant.
So
that's what I think separates.
So are mine, yeah.
This from many other apostles I've seen out there. You've really made it an important part of what the Catholic Toolbox is. It's walking away each episode and each chapter now with 3 practical tools. And let's face it, after even hearing 5 minutes of some content, even maybe this podcast, people are going to forget what you've said. But there's always that takeaway, and we can always remember 3 takeaways. That's what I love about you've made it part of the DNA of the Catholic Toolbox. Is there's 3 takeaways inspired by your work and now applied to the Catholic faith, and I think it's going to have a huge impact. It already is, and I think I see volumes of this. Can you see volumes? Over time, yeah. Brilliant.
I can, yeah.
Yeah, very.
I mean, we're in a TikTok age today.
Yeah.
We're in an Instagram, TikTok age, where we like. I think we're very time poor as a society, especially in the Western world. So having things that are succinct, are really getting to the point.
Yeah.
What frustrated me a little bit was, hearing some homilies and some talks and some instructions, which were great, but I was like, it would be great if I had some practical tools out of this. How can we then take action? Because that's often what people remember What could I do tomorrow? They take notes,
Three takeaways.
make the resolution, and
Beautiful.
go take action.
Very Trinitarian too.
Yeah, number 3.
Now speaking of 3, there are 3 books, and I'm holding in my hand. Number 1, that's the Art of Practical Catholicism, right there. We've got number 2 was this little booklet I hold in my hand, and this one is the Service Toolbox. I like that. A spiritual and ritual guide to serving the liturgy. And it's got you on the front cover there because you've served.
Yeah.
You've emceed. This was not that long after the first book that this was released. What inspired you to write this little booklet?
I think as I from 2020 to mid 20, I started writing the Art of Practical Catholicism, number 1, mid 2020 to 2021. But then once I finished, I was editing the manuscript. I was thinking about the liturgy a lot at that time. It was during a lockdown. It was actually during the first lockdown.
Okay, yes.
Where I really, where we were being locked down from the liturgy, and we were deprived of the Mass, that I was very much in my prayer life. The liturgy, I was thinking about the liturgy and the sacred rituals, and we all missed the Mass. You know, it got to the point where we had no Mass, I think, for about a month. That was that short first lockdown in 20...
No Easter Sunday.
Easter Sunday. And I began to altar serve back in, when I was younger, in about 2000, and after my reversion straight away, I took an interest in liturgy because the liturgy fascinated me. The whole principle of the body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ in the Eucharist and the reverence in the Mass. I began to deduce, when I studied the theology of the Mass, the lex credendi, and I came back to the faith, I then started to infer, well, okay, if this is a sacrifice, we should really have some heaps of reverence for this liturgy. And that wasn't the case that I saw in the average parish life. Sometimes when I was studying my faith and come back to the faith in Year 10, I was looking around and thinking, am I the only one who believes in the real presence of the Eucharist? You know, just maybe, and not judging people, but I didn't feel the sense of reverence in your average parish life for me. And a lot of it came from the sanctuary, from the liturgy. The standard of service was actually, to be quite frank, wasn't the highest standard. And I really solidified my view when I attended in 2011 Maternal Heart of Mary Catholic Chapel back then, but now it's a personal parish. Maternal Heart of Mary in Lewisham. Experienced the traditional Latin Mass, and I saw, wow, this is a standard of serving that reflects the theology I was reading about. So I learned all that theology, and then I saw that practically executed in that Mass. But at the same time, I did grow up in St. Patrick's Cathedral, Parramatta, and it has the highest standard of liturgy as well for the new rite of Mass, for the Novus Ordo. So I was then quickly after exposed to beautiful, reverent liturgy done well of the Novus Ordo and the Latin Mass, and I saw, wow, this is the standard. But I saw in the new rite of Mass that perhaps things could be better improved. And once I was, and I like looking at small details, so I was telling a priest friend of mine back in 2011, I think in late 2010, said, oh, if only they could, servers could walk more reverently, or put their hands together, or do some of these more reverent things. And he said, George, can you stop complaining? Instead of complaining, why don't you get involved and you make that change? Wow. So that's where it started, the journey of, I started serving, and obviously I've been busy, so I've stepped back from doing that. So,
but no, it's a great little booklet, but
that's what I've left other servers with.
Acolytes, servers, deacons, seminarians, discerning seminarians, and topics here: theology of the Mass. Is being an altar server right for me? It's a good question. The benefits of liturgical service, top 10 often forgotten liturgical details, and then you have a conclusion. So it's very simple, very easy to go through. And is available on our website. So we've got a full podcast on this.
Exactly.
So ask viewers and listeners to go back to that. We've also got one on this that we did together as well. So we've got dedicated podcasts on this.
Exactly. I never seen.
I'm going to put these down because what I want to do is I want to do something we haven't really done much in the previous times, is dive in some of the practical chapters and and give people a bit of a practice here to take away. Let's pick 3 takeaways. Let's pick 3 chapters. I'm going to randomly pick 3.
Exactly.
And we're going to give some practical tips from each of these chapters for our viewers and listeners today, and that gives them a sample. Now, this latest book, endorsed now by Father John Flatter, Alan Smith from Fulton Sheet today, great friend of both of us in Canada. Myself, I felt honoured to do that, and I remember when you asked me, and I couldn't help think, seeing our friendship over the years, it's been 14 years.
14 years.
So, and
where did I first meet you, Charbel?
It would have been around the Tim Staples tour, 2009. I remember.
Well, that's where I had my reversion from his story.
Look at that. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
How God puts people together.
Yeah.
And you know, you were still in high school, last couple of years of high school.
Yeah. I was at 89.
Graduated.
Yeah. Year 10.
And we sort of, there was a few years there, maybe we weren't in touch, but then we got back together. You came back to the Voice of Charity, and then we sort of reconnected again over
Exactly.
years. So,
exactly.
Wonderful to see. And I'm so glad God's put us back together, and to see how much you've personally grown, matured spiritually, and the words of wisdom that you're now teaching and passing on. So not only what you've learnt, you've interiorized it, you're now passing on, doing exactly what we're all called to do.
Absolutely grateful for the strong partnership that we have.
Praise God.
Doing work in the vineyard of the Lord, and we have one lifetime on this earth, and we have to do apostolate. We have to save as many. We have to save our souls and get ourselves to heaven, and so many people with us.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I like that the foreword was by Deacon Harold in this one. He was on a tour with us recently, and we managed to be able to do an official launch of the book in person. So Deacon being in Australia at the time, it was fitting to do the launch. And so that was last week's podcast. Actually, we let people know about that, and they can watch that. So what we didn't really do was dive into some of the meat and potatoes. Let's do that now. Again, just for those who want to know, this is 40 chapters like the first. These are 40 new topics. And again, you continue the legacy there with the 3 practical tools. So I'm just looking at some here, and I love, let's go straight to chapter 3. Apostolate in the workplace. So apostolate in the workplace. What do you discuss in this chapter? The apostolate in the workplace, and why would you call it the apostolate in the workplace? So if someone, in my case, I work in an apostolate, Parousia.
Exactly.
And that's sort of clear cut. That's simple to see. What about those, those in a trade, those in office work, in corporate world, and in teaching, in all sorts of background? Can they do apostolate in their workplace?
Absolutely. Absolutely. St. Josemaria Escrivá speaks about the fact that any work can be sanctified if it's good, honest work, and it's given a supernatural dimension. Where we raise a simple task such as doing a report, even a mum at home, who's looking after her kids, cleaning the house, or a man who's mowing his lawn. Any secular or earthly or temporal task can be sanctified if it's given a supernatural dimension, where we take it and elevate it out of it's just doing a report to, hey, I'm doing this report and offering this up for an intention, and sanctifying the work by doing it in the best human form possible, and sanctifying myself from this work, and then I'm able to overflow and talk about Christ in my workplace where I work. Where we spend most of the time of our life is in our workplaces, whether it's in an apostolate that you work in, it's still professional work, or whether it's in a secular profession, or whether it's motherhood, or whether it's looking after your sick parents. Any task can be sanctified. St. Josemaria speaks about this, and I refer to him many times in the book. So doing apostolate in the workplace entails several things: to do the work well, to be the best at your profession. Because by doing the work to the best of your ability, and some people may stop and say, well, what does that have to do with God and evangelizing? And What can being the best at your profession do to help you evangelize? It can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because when we're the best at our profession, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a lawyer, whether you run a business, by being a good, honest professional who is, when I say the best at my profession, it's somewhat colloquial to the fact that you're good at your profession and you try to aspire to be the best. Whatever that means, it's up for interpretation. But to be the best in your profession and by doing that, you develop a certain level of prestige. People look at you in a way that, oh, well, this person provides good value. And so that way, on a human level, in terms of human virtue, you've opened them up to respecting you. Yeah. And you have that prestige built up with people. And then from there, you can move on to do apostolate with those people because they respect you for the good work that you do. You put in that extra time, that co-worker who needed help and has a family, you stayed back with him that hour when you didn't have to. And you spend most of your life in that workplace, whether it's an apostolate working for the church, whether it's a secular profession, it all has that same value. Then from there, we can actually, by being the best at what we do, we're then able to take that to the next level. And people then see, as 1 Peter 3:15 says, sanctify the Lord Jesus Christ in your hearts and always be ready to give an apologia or a defense or an explanation for the hope that lies within you with meekness, kindness, and respect. So then when people see the hope that lies within us by the way we work, we can then have those conversations in the workplace. We can then speak about, one of the methods I actually speak about is the weekend method. What I did on the weekend. People ask about the weekend. You can always slip in church, or if it's Lent, you can always slip in, I fast, during Lent. And
so start a conversation. They're asking, and that's when you plant the seed.
Exactly.
So generally, if people ask what you've done on the weekend, I can imagine not many people would have said church. They would say all the other events except for church. Exclude that part. Include that deliberately. Yeah. And that might spark, I haven't been to church in a long time. Or, what are you doing?
It's a bit tricky. It puts you under obligation to do your work well because look, let's accept the harsh reality. If we don't do our work well, or it's not about sometimes not making mistakes, but by doing your work well and being honest, having a good attitude, and people see that in you, you're there to work. You're not there to evangelize. People know that. It's all about going to work to do your work. So when you develop prestige in your work, people have already opened up.
Yeah.
To
stand on.
You got a leg to stand on.
He's not good at your work right away. It's like, well, you're way wasting your time telling me about stuff that's not related to my work.
Exactly.
You're not even
dedicated
to it.
Yeah, exactly. Or they may associate, he's always late. He's always, he doesn't put in effort in his work.
That's a good point. What you're saying.
Now he's preaching about the gospel.
Yeah. So you're spending now too much time on something that you're not paid to do. And this is where, even it's a good thing, like, if you're coming late for work every day because you want to go to church before work, or you want to duck out and took an extra long lunch break because you want to go to church. Yeah. You're doing good things, but it's the time and place. Is this what the boss wants? Is this what you want to make sure that you're not, falling behind on your duties? Do them first. Yeah. And then when you do them well, then when you've got those little moments in the day, yes, bring these conversations up when you're naturally talking about everything anyway.
Well, here's another one. It's very common among us practicing Catholics in a hostile world that we live in. It's very, very tempting to just remove ourselves from other colleagues at work who may not practice the faith or may have more of a liberal agenda. They're people too that need saving. We need to be able to have a balance where we live our faith, we do not compromise, but when we go into the workplace, we actually can still socialize with people who have differing views, may have different religious views, or may not like our views, or may not share our more conservative views. The way the language of today. We need to be able to still go for a coffee, have a conversation, build that friendship with them, because that's what can bring people back to the faith. I've heard so many stories by great people who are living this in their day-to-day circumstance, And then I meet some of these people and I ask, oh, well, how'd you come to the Catholic faith? I think, congratulations. They say, oh, well, I worked with this person and through the friendship, I was eventually led to get baptized and become Catholic.
There it is.
And imagine, it's scary to think, if we don't do apostolate in the workplace, we don't do apostolate with our neighbors, we don't do apostolate, how can you imagine if St. Paul didn't do apostolate or evangelize?
That's right.
So we're not called to stand on the streets and evangelize. We're called in the midst of our ordinary circumstance, there in that midst where we spend most of our time to through friendship to bring people to Christ.
Love it. And St. Paul, he was one there on the topic of doing the work well. Work as if though you're doing it for the Lord. Exactly. And then you've got a standard for yourself, and brilliant. And I love this. Again, you got the 3 practical tips, and just one of them. One way you can do this is by sharing your faith with co-workers, and you might involve inviting them to join you for a spiritual activity. So you say that as one tip. So just as an invitation, sharing some resources as well, books or other resources. This is all in one. You also talk about you can volunteer in your community. So that was good, going to a soup kitchen or a local charity. And the last little tip here, you've got get involved in mentoring or some sort of, make sure you're listening and be a source of support for them. Be there for them. Really good. So 3 takeaways right there, apostolate in the work. Yeah. And it's all rooted in do your work well and a friendship. So
exactly.
Very good. I love it.
Work well and friendship, and then through that friendship and doing your work well, and which entails doing the work so well.
Yes.
And helping others and being a leader. Like we all know that manager that we work with, that coworker that was just a leader. He cared. He went that extra mile. But do you think the person who doesn't do that, as opposed to the person who is that leader, cares for his staff, cares for his team, who will better dispose their co-workers to receive the gospel? The one who does it well. Yeah, that's right. So that's
very good.
A takeaway.
So that's one example there. Yeah. Let's pick another random chapter here. Explore the Eastern churches. So you actually you've got a chapter dedicated to that, chapter 29. Explore the Eastern churches. What is this chapter about? Why did you do that?
Well, I am son of Lebanese Maronite migrants to Australia, and I was schooled in the tradition of the Maronites for 13 years of my life. And though I was baptized within the Latin Church and confirmed in the Latin Church, and when I had my reversion, it's always been my spirituality, both the extraordinary and the ordinary form of the Roman Rite. But very much the Catholicity of the Church I experienced in my upbringing was because I attended both the East and the West. Yeah, Western Church. Even though my parish was the Cathedral at Parramatta, so St. Patrick's Cathedral, Parramatta. So, and I believe and what really, really annoyed me, and I remember this very vividly at school, was we were at I went to a Maronite school, and somebody and the priest had given a homily about Maronites being part of the Universal Church, and then some student, maybe in late primary school or early high school, making noise, woke up from sleeping and said, "Oh, are we Catholic? Are we Catholic?"
They didn't know that.
But also, what frustrated me on the other side, on the other side of the West, was the fact that so many people never knew about the Eastern churches. Are they Catholic?
Yeah, that's right. Some don't think you can even go to the Mass on Sunday. They think it's
exactly
a different rite is like a different faith. Well, no, that's not correct. We all
are they commune with Rome? Or they ask questions with suspicion. And I thought to myself that it's such a shame. Yeah. There are 22 Eastern churches. We need to shed light on this. Yes. So the Catholic Church consists of the Pope, the universal head of the Church, the successor of St. Peter. But then you have 21 rites of the Eastern, 21 self-governing churches of the East, and one self-governing church in the Latin Church of the West. Most of the church is Latin, but then you have 21 Eastern churches. You have the Maronites, the Syrian Catholic Church, the Chaldeans, the Syro-Malabar, Syro-Malankara, the Byzantine churches, which all use the Byzantine liturgy of St. John Chrysostom, the Russian church, Ukrainian church. These are Catholic churches, the Russian Catholic Church, Ukrainian Catholic Church, the Armenians, the Coptic Catholic Church, which, by the way, are in Prospect here in Sydney, beautiful church. So it's so fascinating to me because the fact that we have one theology, that the Mass is a representation of the sacrifice on Calvary, the worship of God and for the redemption of our souls, was just amazing. And then that can be expressed in so many different rites according to the local custom and tradition, how it developed. Everyone should experience it. Yeah. Because each liturgy emphasizes something different about that same theology. Like you go to the Maronite liturgy, and that emphasizes more of God's mercy and God. We're asking God for mercy all the time, and the offering of incense. I think before the liturgy of the Word, they emphasize that incense is being offered. The Latin Church is always about in the Latin Mass about the sacrifice of the Mass, the oblation being offered. The Byzantine liturgy emphasizes a bit more about the glory of the kingdom of God.
Interesting.
So it's a kingdom, we're in God's kingdom. Heaven is coming down. So there's that emphasis, and it's just beautiful to experience all of them so that we can have a holistic, well-rounded, we can become better, well-rounded Catholics. Let's say if you're a Latin Catholic who's only been to the, for example, your local parish which offers the Novus Ordo, and then obviously attend the Latin Mass, the 1962 Missal, but then you venture out. Let's look at other Eastern liturgies such as the Byzantine liturgy.
Yeah,
exactly. So the practical, I emphasize the value.
Here.
I have 4.
Yeah,
I couldn't summarize it in 3. Sometimes I spill over.
That's good. I mean, you got research is 1, plan number 2, connect number 3, and then go and better understand the diversity present in the liturgical rites of the Eastern Church. You got to refer back to the Latin Rite itself, and then look in that as well. So you threw that in as number 4. But research. So start by researching the various churches, which you've given a sample.
Yeah.
Plan. Go and plan it and visit a rite, and you want to get experience. And this will fulfill your Sunday obligation. So you could pick a Sunday, go to a Eastern Rite Mass, and that does fulfill your Sunday obligation. You don't have to be in your own rite. If you go to another rite, please do.
All valid masses, all valid priests. It's just a different rite. You know what's actually funny is I explain this to people who still, after explaining to the fact the Pope is the head of the church, all these churches may have their own liturgical customs and traditions, but they're on commune with the Pope, and we have the same catechism, same faith, same belief. It's just the liturgy. And I think people understand it once they see, we have the Latin Mass and the Novus Ordo, and within the Latin Church, there's the Dominican Rite, the Carthusian Rite, there's the Mozarabic Rite, there's different there are rites within the Latin Church that are all very similar to the Latin Mass, but may have different variations. So I think people then become comfortable with the idea, there's more than one rite. There's a new rite, there's a Latin Mass here, there's 2. A Dominican rite, which the Dominicans offer. And then if you go to southern France, if you're lucky, you can experience the Carthusian rite, or the Rite of Milan, which is the Rite of Milan. And there's the Franciscan rite, which is very rare to see, with all its different variations. So the Catholic faith doesn't just translate to having the same Mass. It's about our faith. However, liturgically, what liturgy you feel you can better participate in to spiritually see that theology and participate is anyone's free. I know many Latin Rite Catholics who go to Maronite churches because they love the Maronite liturgy. Many Latin Rite Catholics who go to the Byzantine, and vice versa. Very much.
Had you experienced the universality of the church? And the Eastern Mass, you actually mentioned St. John Paul II. And breathing with the 2 lungs, we've got to breathe with both lungs. So that's beautiful.
And he celebrated the Byzantine liturgy with the Ukrainian Catholic Church. So this is the Pope celebrating another liturgy.
Wow.
And I think Pope Francis recently, in his trip to Iraq, his apostolic visit to Iraq actually celebrated a Chaldean Mass.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I watched that. I think it was struggling a little bit because it was translated into Italian and he couldn't do it in Arabic. And also you have different priests within Sydney, good friends of mine who are Latin rite priests, but they are by ritual in, let's say, in different rites.
Yeah.
Or they celebrate different. So any priest of the Catholic Church can, by permission, say any liturgy in principle. They don't have to say the one rite. There are many rites that are valid and bring about the sacrament. It's good to experience that. So we see that we're a universal church. You experience that first-handedly.
Love it.
Yeah, and I give practical tools on how to do that. How to visit it, how to find these churches.
That was I going to say,
book an appointment with the priest. Get the priest. Many priests have given me tours, of, welcome, you're welcome to our church. Explain to you. Yeah, they actually really, really enjoy it.
Yeah, go out there. That's a great tip. Go and book a tour.
Yeah.
Local Eastern Rite.
Yeah.
Well, let's do one more.
Yeah.
In the form of 3. Chapter 38, you've got here, build authentic friendships.
Mm-hmm.
And just looking at these topics that you've done, the topics themselves are practical, let alone the way you draw out practical tips.
Exactly.
So it's not as if you've just gone for the really high-end, high theology topics that might be hard to understand. You've actually gone for practical topics.
Yeah.
So workplace, go expand your knowledge of the church through visiting an Eastern Rite, and now friendships. So very practical stuff here. But let's dive into that. What is this chapter about, and how is this sort of tied into the Catholic faith? Anyway, talk about that.
So friendships are very, very important because friendships what allow us to be in communion with each other, and essentially, as I mentioned before, in doing apostolate and bringing people to Christ, it has to be done through friendship.
Yeah,
I think we don't live in a time. I think that in many places you can. You can stand up in the street, preach the gospel, and thousands convert. Hopefully that's the case. Yes. But apostolate now, I think, with different generations, needs to be done through friendship. So friendship is very, very important because we need to be able to draw people to ourselves and have genuine good friendships with each other. I think in today's age, many people, what Pope John Paul II speaks against is the utilitarianism, being friends with people because there's something I can get out of them. And we live in an age where it can be hard to develop good, authentic friendships, where we can truly say, is this person my friend? Is this person really, if I put them to the test, would they be there for me? Within reason. So I wanted to dedicate a chapter to that, to allow people to reflect, the people in our lives, and also to be that good friend. Yes. We can't attract good people that are our true friends if we're not going to be the ideal friend. Because friendship needs to be built on virtue. Now, this is not saying that everyone has to be Catholic. I have many great friends who don't share my faith or are atheists, but they have good human virtue, and we can be friends. And from that good human virtue, if somebody hasn't come to Christ, you can expound upon that. You can elevate them to the supernatural dimension.
Yes.
It's much easier if they have that human virtue. So I want people to think about their friendships in that chapter and think to themselves, okay, well, I need to be surrounded by good people as well, because as the famous saying goes, you're the sum of the 5 people that you spend your time with. Right. So environment's also important. Yeah. So if we're not surrounded by good, virtuous people, then we can't be, we're not in a good environment that can then influence and have an impact on us so we can be a good person to others. So I really want to talk about friendship in that chapter.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, you got, I love, you're expanding in the chapter, constant check-ins with one another. A good friend. It's not just merely a coffee catch-up.
Exactly.
You go more and beyond that.
Exactly.
Your 3 tips here are active listening and being attentive to what they're saying.
Exactly.
That's a great tip. Number 2 is participate in one another's interests. So a good friend isn't just doing their own thing. They want to do what their friend wants to do. So
exactly.
That's a very good tip. very simple.
And I think it's hard to find from speaking to a lot of people, at least from my firsthand experience. It can be hard to find that character and those virtues in people today, because I think we're very busy, we're preoccupied in ourselves, and a lot of friendships you can just tell from what people are telling me are just coffee catch-ups here and there. And if you got into trouble, for example, could you call that person? Or if you have an achievement, or if there's something great in your life and you want to share with that person, can you call that person? So it's about really examining who are my friends, and am I a good friend first and foremostly? Because we can't point the finger at other people and expect so much of our friends if we're not living that ourselves.
Very true.
I think by being something yourself, you attract the same people to you, something similar. So checking in with people is something very, very important. I have a very good friend of mine who always used to check in with me and still does, every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's sort of part of the routine. I have other friends who do that, but they'll call me, ask me a question, how you going? What's happening? And it's funny, my mum does the same thing as well.
Oh, great.
She'll call every day. How are you today? Nothing's changed since yesterday. I think it may be a Lebanese thing. Lebanese people understand.
Constantly checking in. But it's a practice, just checking in, keeping in touch with your friends.
Yeah.
And you've got here number 3, to be honest and vulnerable. Honesty and vulnerability are essential for true relationships. You expand on all these, by the way. I'm just giving everyone
There's so much to speak about in there.
But very good.
So much to speak about, and so much to reflect about as well.
Yes. What I love about it, the format is very easy. The text is a good size. It's easy, nicely spaced, and you've got the 3 practical tips. Yeah. Nice and straightforward. You do have, at the very end, the notes and practical resolution, so people can take notes for themselves. You got a bit about the Catholic Toolbox. Further recommended reading, that's great. You've even got in there the 10 Commandments, a prayer to St. Michael, and a conclusion. So why did you feel to put the 10 Commandments and the prayer to St. Michael in this?
Well, the prayer to St. Michael will allow us to approach this as spiritual battle, because we're fighting every single day. We wake up and there's a spiritual war waged against us, and the prayer to St. Michael really affirms to us that we have to keep struggling and we have to fight, and invokes the help of St. Michael in this fight. Yeah, because this is really, really a fight. We have to fight it is a fight to live human virtue, to evangelize, to remain vigilant in your day-to-day spiritual life. So, and somebody actually recommended to me, I was reading the manuscript, they said, why don't you put in the prayer to St. Michael? That can really help people at the end of the book, and to really pray the prayer to St. Michael and the 10 Commandments to facilitate an examination of conscience as well, and to really emphasize the human and supernatural virtues that are required there. So we put them at the back as a little resource for people.
And further reading, great list, as well as partners. So I just want to show, partners, you got 2 pages full of partners.
Yeah, they've grown since the first book.
That's right. So fantastic. Some of the Voice of Charity, of course, Parousia, Radio Maria, Australia, EWTN, Cradio, you got TV Maria, the Crane Media, Deacon Halberg Sivers, and Bishop Sheen Today. Yeah. Great, solid partners there. Look, this is fantastic. I love this. The Art of Practical Catholicism, Your Faith Guide. Brought to you by the Catholic Toolbox as well. Looking forward to getting through all of this. Just in closing, final remarks, who would this book be for? What's your sort of target audience for something like this?
Anybody above the age of reason, to high school, especially high school and above. Okay.
So teenagers can pick this up very easily.
Yeah.
And just myself looking through it, it is very easy to follow, very easy to read. You could get through this in one sitting if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Or you could actually space this out and sort of do like a 40-day challenge.
Exactly.
And just do one day, I'm going to focus on this, the next day. And that might be a beautiful way of doing it.
As His Grace Bishop Richard Umbers, in his endorsement of the first book, actually suggested, he said this could be stimulus for good spiritual reading.
Yeah.
But mainly it's there for reflection. So each chapter will incite reflection in people people to take it up and actually think about these principles. And they may actually think, oh, well, I have my own practical resolutions. I might actually want to do it a different way, and that's good because I'm getting people to think with the art of practical Catholicism. It's a mindset. I speak about it, I emphasize it very importantly in the second book, that it's a mindset to not just learn our faith, but to actually execute it. We have to live it. And what saddens me a lot is that when I meet great Catholics that practice their faith, is I don't see an urgency to actually build their spiritual life sometimes. There's no urgency to work on their spiritual life, and there's no urgency to take action, do apostolate. I think that book can really change the way you think and rewire your mindset and put you on the path. Because over the 2 books, there's 80 topics.
Yes.
There's so many topics, but it will, as my good friend Alan J. Smith, who endorsed the back of the book, at the back of the book,
Yes.
said he read the manuscript, and I have coffee on Saturday mornings every couple of weeks, and we talk over Zoom, and it's his evening, it's my morning, Canada or Australia.
Yes.
And he said to me, "Oh, I just read it, and it's a spiritual workout. I feel like I'm in a boot camp here, you know. Each topic, practical tool. Each topic, practical tool. Each topic, this is what I have to do. This is what I have to do. I keep pounding you with practical tools." Yes. And at the end of it, eventually the topic will fade away, because you'll be equipped with the mindset by reading these 2 books. You'll be and listening to the show consistently every single week. You'll be equipped with obviously tools for each topic and suggestion to live your week, but you'll get into the habit and the mindset of the art of practical Catholicism, which is to be proactive in taking the faith, digesting it, executing it straight away with developing practical tools and hitting your targets, all for the salvation of our soul. Here on the Catholic Toolbox, it's about getting to heaven.
Yeah.
Sometimes we cloud that, we take initiatives and we forget about that, but that's the whole goal, to live our faith, to take action so we can save our soul and save as many people with us. I'm glad to see so many clergy in their homilies adapting to this mindset, and so many people in their talks.
Fantastic.
Adapting, you can hear some changes in people who do regularly listen in their approach to the practical aspects of the faith, or getting to the practical. How can we take action?
I love that. Yes, that's a good point. It's not just George's practical tips.
Yeah.
Start taking on this mindset so you can come up with your own practical tips. What are your own takeaways?
Exactly.
Love that.
Yeah. Or if you go to a parish council meeting, or if you're at a youth group meeting, or if there's a faith meeting, we talk about it, but how can we strategize?
Yeah.
What can we do to live our faith, bring people to Christ, and be more systematic and strategic, as I like to put it.
Well done. Well, congratulations again, George. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
The Parousia podcast, and looking forward to the next 40. And if people want to listen to your show, and I wonder if they can go back to your previous shows and try and line up the chapters with those shows. So could they do that?
Absolutely.
So
yeah, there are.
Where can they go?
They can go to thecatholictoolboxshow.com. That is thecatholictoolboxshow.com. That's my website for the show. And they can go follow us on every social media platform. So they can go to Facebook and follow The Catholic Toolbox, Instagram, The Catholic Toolbox. And most importantly is the podcast that people can follow us on. And that is just simply The Catholic Toolbox. And you'll find the shield with the keys and the tool, the spanner. And people should be able to find it there. So we're on every single podcast platform. So people can essentially go to our website, thecatholictoolboxshow.com, and they can subscribe to our weekly newsletter.
Excellent.
Alert, and they can also download the podcast on any podcast platform, whether it's Spotify or whether it's
on iTunes,
on
Android.
Every single platform we're available. So The Catholic Toolbox, hit subscribe button and follow us. And you'll be able every single week to participate in different topics.
Thank you, sir.
Same mindset, practical tools.
And Parousia is proud to be able to work with you on this and publish these 3. So this is it. I've got the full set now. At the moment, we've got the altar service toolbox. We've got Art of Practical Catholicism Part 1, and Art of Practical Catholicism Part 2, now available, parousiamedia.com under the store. Get it while it's available right now in stock. The physical books are there. Please get one. So thanks again, George.
Thank you so much for having us
in the prayers. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. That's another Parousia podcast. Do the same. Check out the Catholic Toolbox show. The artwork, the Art of Practical Catholicism is now out, and get onto that podcast today, and subscribe to this one as well, Parousia Podcast. We're on all these platforms, and please share this with family and friends. We're on our YouTube channel. Go onto the YouTube channel, subscribe, click the bell, and you'll be up to date with all the latest content, 100% free, and it's growing every single week. So please get there and spread the word. God bless you, everyone. Until next time, take care.
In this era of grave spiritual crisis, it is not enough to simply know about your Catholic faith. That is why we need a Catholic toolbox to equip us with the practical skills necessary to live our Catholic faith to reach our ultimate goal, which is heaven for all eternity. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. for the Catholic Toolbox as we hand you the tools to go forth, live the faith, and change our modern world today. Live on the Voice of Charity.